As the year 2023 is about to end, let's take a look at the global leaders, the major global leaders who visited India in the year 2023. Hello and welcome to the in-depth series section of Drishti IAS. I'm Aisha Singh, and in today's video we will be discussing about the Rewind 2023, the global leaders who visited India. About the points of discussion, first we'll be looking at the news, then the country leaders who visited India: Italy, Germany, Nepal, Australia, Sri Lanka, Saudi Arabia, and in the end we'll be doing a prelims MCQ. Topic is of relevance from General Studies paper 2, that is International Relations. What can come into the exam is the relationship that India shares with all these countries and what are the new developments that has taken place India with these countries. So the news talks about India's 2023 diplomacy in 7 global leaders visit to New Delhi, and few of these leaders, their first ever visit has taken place to India. So the year 2023 has marked few of the most important and the most powerful leaders coming to India and discussing the diplomacy and the global scenario with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Draupadi Murmu. So first and foremost is the G20 Summit 2023 that has taken place in India, and it was a successful summit which India hosted for the very first time. And we reached to a consensus, and our G20 declaration was signed by every single party, and one of the biggest achievement also was the consensus that India managed the other countries to reach to. And then the other major development that took place in the G20 summit was the inclusion of the African Union into the G20, which became the African Union became the second bloc, the regional bloc to enter into the G20 apart from the European Union. And then apart from this, the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor was also signed, which is being looked from the perspective of that it will be a good answer to China's Belt and Road Initiative also, and this will look to move towards and work towards increasing the economic prosperity in the or between the India, Middle East and Europe. And then few of the major leaders of the world which took part in the G20 summit was President of USA, that is Joe Biden, Prime Minister of UK Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister of Japan Fumio Kishida, Prime Minister of Canada, that is Justin Trudeau, and then President of France Emmanuel Macron. And then the meeting took place in India. So India hosted the G20 summit. So this was majorly about the G20 summit, and this was a summit in which majority of the leaders, the world leaders, the topmost leaders of the world, they came to India, they sat together and they reached to a historic G20 declaration. Then German Chancellor India visit. So as of now the German Chancellor is Olaf Scholz. So he was in India on a visit on 22nd and 23rd of February. It means in the starting of the year 2023, German Chancellor had a India visit, and he met President Draupadi Murmu and the Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi. Then they talked about the need for joint efforts to deal with the negative impacts of the Russia-Ukraine conflict on the world. So there was few of the points which the world leaders had talked about in the year 2023, and one of them is the Russia-Ukraine war and the impact the Russia-Ukraine war is having on the world and on the civilian population, and also it disrupted the supply chain, the supply of natural gas and oil to the Western countries, and what has been the impact. So all these things the world leaders have discussed throughout the year. And this was Olaf Scholz's first visit to India. Then Italy Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni India visit. So Giorgia Meloni came to India in the year 2023 twice. First is the bilateral visit And then in the G20 summit also she came to India. And then she came to India on 2nd and 3rd of March apart from the G20 summit, and this was her first official visit to India. Then there was a firm commitment to democracy, freedom, human rights and rule of law as key values in promoting peace, stability and development. So both the countries were focusing on to developing the stability and having a good and a fulfilled democracy, and human rights and rule of law has been a major topic also which the countries have discussed. And then Italy has also become a state which has come out of China's Belt and Road Initiative. So if we look from India's perspective, so that is a good sign. And then serious concern about the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. It means both the counterparts have discussed about the negative impacts of the Russia-Ukraine war. And then defense equipment co-development and co-production in India. Defense equipment, as India is focusing a lot on the Make in India, and defense equipment Make in India scene has been doing the rounds, and India has been working a lot on the increasing the manufacturing capacity within the state. Then comes the state visit of Australian Prime Minister. So the Australian Prime Minister visited India on from 8th to 11th of March 2023, and it was Australia's great support for India's G20 presidency and its priorities for the forum in 2023. Australia has been a huge supporter of India about the G20 presidency, and India has proved themselves right and all its counterpart right by successfully hosting the G20 summit and following the theme of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and getting the world onto and signing a declaration with consensus. And the Australia and India visit highlighted the significance of defense industry, research and material cooperation between the two countries. Defense industry, as India is also a big defense importer, and Australia is also a big importer of the defense equipment, while India on the other hand is also making an effort to increase its production and manufacturing in India to support the Make in India and the Atmanirbhar Bharat concept. So Australia can be of huge help and also can be a great partner for India. And then boosting connections between Indian and Australian defense industrial bases. So defense equipment and the discussion about the defense manufacturing and defense import and export was of great concern between both the counterparts, and enhance cooperation between the two nations. Then Nepal Prime Minister calls on President Murmu. So Nepal's Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal called on the President of India Draupadi Murmu, and India looked forward to a positive agenda in India-Nepal bilateral relations, as India shares a land border with Nepal, and Nepal is India's main concern also, as it works as a buffer state between India on the south and China on the north. So Nepal holds a strategic significance and a strategic importance for India. Then the open border between India and Nepal has encouraged tourism from both sides, as a lot of tourists from both the sides or the border exchange takes place on a very regular basis. And the sister city agreements and improvement in financial connectivity can also boost tourism between two countries. Financial connectivity is a prime important point that has been raised between both the countries, and India has also introduced its RuPay cards, and it with time and gradually it is becoming legit in other countries also. So Nepal is a priority for India, and added that India looks forward to furthering our development partnership. If the economic prosperity is, if from the perspective of economic prosperity, if we look properly, then we will be able to find that India will grow and India will prosper, and there can be huge growth which can be seen if the neighboring countries of India like Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Bangladesh, they will also do well, because there will be a lot of reciprocity which will count between both the countries. Then Sri Lanka president visits India. So Sri Lanka, as we all know, is going through a major financial issues. So the support which Sri Lanka needed at the time, which was not going right for Sri Lanka, India was there to support Sri Lanka. So on 21st of July, Sri Lanka President Ranil Wickremesinghe visited India, and India-Sri Lanka partnership has been a source of strength in overcoming economic difficulties faced by Sri Lanka. So India has a maritime boundary, India shares a maritime boundary with Sri Lanka, and the history has been, there has been a huge history between Sri Lanka and India, and they have been since a long period of time they have been each other's partner in difficult situations. And before COVID and COVID situations, the tourism industry of Sri Lanka, which Sri Lanka heavily depends on for its revenues, it was completely shattered because of the international travel restrictions, and that is when Sri Lanka's GDP and Sri Lanka's economic difficulties started taking a toll. And there was firm commitment to and confidence in democracy, stability and economic recovery in Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka has also got support from the International Monetary Fund, and while being a good partner in difficult situations, India has also provided financial support and the economic support to Sri Lanka. Significance of India's continued support and investment for sustainable Sri Lanka. If the neighboring countries of India will not do well, then India, being one of the fastest growing economy and also being a big player of the global south and of the developing and the least developed countries, India stood by them, and India tries to help them as much as India can. Then Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia India visit, and that is the Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And we all know that Saudi Arabia is gaining prominence in the world. Saudi Arabia, apart from being an oil giant, is also moving towards increasing and diversifying its economy, and they're also looking to diversify its revenue potential and sources of revenue. So Prince Mohammed bin Salman visited India in September, and the bilateral ties between India and Saudi Arabia had strengthened. So we export them few of the things that can be apparel, that can be stones, that can be garments, and what we majorly import from them is oil. As we all know that Saudi Arabia is a oil giant. Then India, Saudi Arabia shared cultural experiences, economic synergies and shared commitment towards a peaceful and sustainable world makes us natural partners. And Saudi Arabia also has a lot of India population, that is Indian diaspora. We also receive a lot of remittance from Saudi Arabia. And the Hajj pilgrimage, India has a large chunk of people or a large population which is going for Hajj to Saudi Arabia. So the cultural exchange has been on a huge level. Then ample opportunities for increasing Saudi investments in India. At Saudi Arabia's economy is flourishing, is going on a right direction, and the way they are expanding and diversifying, India and Saudi Arabia can be a good partner. Then Saudi Arabia has embraced a large number of Indian expatriates and given them space to flourish and grow. So a lot of population, India's population is staying and residing in Saudi Arabia and doing well. So in the end, a prelims MCQ, and people need to tell me the answer in the comment section. The G20 Summit 2023 led to the signing of New Delhi Declaration, that is the G20 Declaration, then Global Biofuel Alliance, and India, Middle East, Europe Economic corridor. And you need to select the correct code, 1 and 2 only, 1 and 3 only, 2 and 3 only, or 1, 2 and 3. So, give me the answer in the comment section, and that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Till we meet next time, keep reading and keep writing.